Welcome to the Taking the Leap podcast, where you can learn how to launch your full-time career in this part-time gig economy. No matter what career you're in, you have the potential to be the best version of you and overcome whatever obstacles stand in your way. And now, here's your host, the CEO of Bonvera, Bob Dickey.
Welcome back to the Leap podcast. I'm your host, Bob Dickey, and this afternoon, I'm blessed to be able to be in Carrollton, Texas, at a pretty cool establishment, MacDaddy's, an Apple store. And I must say, of all the Apple stores that I've ever been to, this happens to be the coolest, hands down, Apple store. I love the great quotes that are all over the outside of this building, this old 1907 building, I think is when it was started. And we've got a little speakeasy, it looks like a saloon / piano bar here in the back, and just the way it's been decorated up. But for those of you who might be wondering why I am in a Mac store, not only am I a huge Mac fan, but I'm a huge fan of the two people who are sitting across the table from me. And I am blessed to be able to speak with Kirk and Nicole Porter, longtime residents of the Dallas, Texas, Fort Worth area, serial entrepreneurs, having started there, and sure enough, wouldn't you know it, as soon as we sit down to do a podcast, we've already got customers banging on the front door. Let me in. I want to see this. Yes, no, Steve Jobs is not here, but here we go. It's all right. This is live. We're going to keep on going. This will make it fun. Of all the Mac stores I've ever been to, this is the coolest one. So for those of you who are traveling through the Dallas-Fort Worth area, you need to make sure that you stop in and check this out. But more important than just the awesome ambiance and all the little cool accoutrements that are here, I'm really, Nicole, excited to be able to speak with you and your husband. And it looks like another satisfied customer has been served. Yes. They will come back and be able to get one of their Apple either worked on or a brand new Apple product here in a second. And it looks like we're handing out some business cards. So
nothing like right in the raw of doing business.
That's
on
right.
An entrepreneur podcast.
This is the perfect way to start this podcast with you guys, an entrepreneur's podcast, because this is the messiness, the rawness of being an entrepreneur. You've got to be on your toes. You got to be flexible. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, but.
Well, too, just even the service to people.
Yeah.
Like if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you got to be willing to serve. It's a great example right here.
At all times, even in the middle of a podcast, we're trying to. We had a sign on the front door. It says, "Hey, we're closed," but it's like, "Hey, when a customer needs to be served, you've got to be there."
Absolutely.
And so, Kirk, a great job stepping up and taking care of some customers. Now, We'll dive into this in a second. I want to make sure we come back to it. But you've been in the tech sector for quite some time, and you have customers all over the world who order products from you because you've built a great relationship. And I want to tease out what you've learned on your journey. But just so for folks who are listening, I want to make sure that they get a little bit of an understanding of who we are talking with today. So not only are you guys just great personal friends of mine, I've got a great deal of respect and admiration for you and the way that you lead your businesses and the way you think about business and process, and as we just saw, serve your customers. But you got your start back in the day with Lockheed Martin. Kirk, you were in tech. With Lockheed Martin, and Nicole, you were a dental hygienist, right? And then along the lines, you guys have, you've branched out into real estate. Kirk, you've branched out in multiple other entrepreneurial pursuits. So tell me a little bit about your background, and did you guys both have this passion and dream to kind of like be your own boss, or what led you to like leave what would be considered, a safe corporate America job? Lockheed Martin, great company, dental hygienist, that's a great pay, and all of a sudden you guys are like, no, I want to go do my own thing. What happened?
Well, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur from an early age, and I was never really good at school. So I always wanted to do something different. So I went to school, got good grades or kind of good grades. Then I started to go to corporate America, realized corporate America wasn't for me. But then every time I tried to become an entrepreneur, I just hit a brick wall. Like no one wanted to share with me what they knew. And then probably about 15 years ago, I got connected with some guys that were willing to coach me and teach me about entrepreneurship, which is very rare that someone would actually do that for you. So Nicole and I met when we were about 19 years old, and she went to dental school. I won't tell her story. But one of the things that I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. So she was going to dental school. I didn't know what I wanted to do. So she was like, Kirk, why don't you go to dental lab tech school and learn how to be a dental lab tech, which I had no interest in whatsoever. And
so she was wanting you to like have the same career field she was having, so you guys could kind of work kind of in the same sector.
It's the whole define, learn, do, right? She basically said, you should go to dental lab tech school because they make good money and you can open up your own lab. And I was like, okay, that's exactly what I'll do, because kind of what happened with her with hygiene. And so I went to dental lab tech school. I came into some money, ended up quitting school halfway through, opened up a business at 19, 20 years old, and it was called the Tooth Factory. And so at 19 years
candy
old,
shop?
No, we made teeth.
You made really?
Yeah, I made teeth.
Hold on, how does a 19-year-old kid is making teeth?
Yeah.
I mean, did you have people buy these teeth?
A couple people. So I dumped about $50,000 to $60,000 into this business, and it was the craziest thing ever. I'm always been a risk taker, right? So I was like, okay, I'm going to open up my own. But back then I didn't really have people skills because I hadn't read any people books and I was kind of shy. And so I would literally be 19, 20 years old going into these dentists and saying, hey, switch your person that you're using that's doing a great job and come let the Tooth Factory make your teeth. And they're like, this one dentist felt so sorry for me, and because I was so nervous and intimidated to go in there. She literally said, I feel sorry for you, so I'm going to give you a couple cases, see if you can handle it. So she gave me some cases, and we did a good job on them. But I ended up shutting the thing down because that wasn't my passion, and I just did it. So I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur, but never had anybody that was willing to invest in me and teach me those ropes on how to do it.
So, but what led you to want to be an entrepreneur? I mean, because there's a lot of people who just be like, hey, I'm looking to make, a good salary. I want to follow in the footsteps maybe of a family member or somebody, get a good job. But you had that because you eventually got in with Lockheed Martin, right? And then said, hey, I want to go do something else.
Yeah, I remember working at Lockheed Martin and having it made there. I saw my boss like twice a week for an hour or two. He was in a totally different building than me. And I remember talking to the other IT guys and be like, we need to open our own business. We need to do this. We need to do that. But I didn't know how to do it. And I was hoping maybe they had an idea of how to do it. They didn't know. So they kind of like, yeah, that'd be cool. To them, it was a fantasy. To me, I always wanted to learn. So I felt like I was stuck, right? So here I am 7 years into my career at Lockheed Martin, making good money, Fridays off. In December, I'd have almost a month off of, because they shut down because they were contracted by the government. The government doesn't work in December. So I had a lot of free time, but I felt like I was in prison. And I just remember being trapped. I was like, I got to get out of this. How do I get out of this? And then one of my friends that was actually an entrepreneur in Michigan who owned multiple businesses, that as a kid, we always talked about going to business with one another. And he came down and was like, hey, I want to share some concepts with you, from some guys that I learned from that are willing to share on how to be successful as an entrepreneur. And I just jumped all over it. Nicole and I were completely in a looking window. She was 7 years into her career as a dental hygienist. She was starting to experience carpal tunnel in her hands. She made great money. I mean, we had really great careers. We had a lot of flexibility, but we didn't want to be in the rat race anymore. And so we were just so hungry in what they call the looking window. If you would have showed me anything that was legal, moral, and ethical, I would have got into it. Yeah, I would have signed up. I'm done. Yeah, get me out of this, this place. And so once I got connected with these guys, they literally coached and mentored me for 2 years. And past that, but to where for the first 2 years, they coached and taught me everything to where I was able to replace my income as an IT guy. And Nicole did the same. And so we never looked back after that and just started really learning and developing into becoming an entrepreneur. And then also now we coach and train other people on how to be entrepreneurs.
It's really interesting because there seems to be a common thread with a number of the folks that I've interviewed in terms of the coaching and mentoring and how that has been so important in their career to achieve success. I mean, I think to a person thus far, everyone has had some type of coach or mentor that has helped them. So I want to talk a little bit about that, but before we get too far down the track, Nicole, you're sitting next to your husband here. I want to hear a little about your background and story. So did you always want to be a dental hygienist? Is this something that was like your dream job, or did you just kind of stumble into it? And then what causes you to pivot? I mean, it sounds like you had carpal tunnel syndrome, but you made a pretty substantial pivot, say, no, I'm going to go do something on my own, right?
Right. No, definitely dental hygiene was not, a childhood dream. It's, Kirk kind of referenced that whole define, learn, do principle. And the same thing happened to me. I was in college, probably like most college kids. They go in excited just to get out of the house and move away from home, and they don't really know what they want to do. I mean, some do. I didn't. Went through my first year of college and literally still had no clue. I had way too much fun that first year, and got that dreaded phone call from my dad, and he basically said, you can come home and I'll keep paying, or you can stay there and you can pay. So at that time, I was smart enough to say, you know what, I'm going to come back, get my head together. Mm-hmm. And it was in that space where I sat down with a girlfriend of mine, and she said, Nicole, you should be a dental hygienist. They make really good money and you get Fridays off. And I'm like, that's exactly what I'm going to do. And I literally applied for dental hygiene all based on someone's advice that I don't even know if she ever had her teeth cleaned. I literally took her advice.
So she wasn't a dental hygienist.
No.
She just happened to she could have been.
She just had heard the information somewhere and thought she'd give it to me because I was clueless of what I wanted to do, and I took it. And did they get Fridays off? Yes. Did I make really good money? Yes. But several years into my career, I realized I just can't do this for the rest of my life. I had chronic neck, shoulder, arm pain. I started having babies.
Oh, no.
And realizing, man, somebody owns me. Right. Somebody owns my time. And, I feel blessed that I was raised by parents that I saw their story play out. They went from working jobs to owning their own business, and they had a very successful business. And so I did have that example in my parents, and I saw they had more flexibility when they owned their own business than they did when they were employees. And so we were looking, Kirk made that point. We just both honestly got inside that looking window at the same time and said, there's got to be more than this. So we were blessed to be able to just learn some new concepts, really like that whole define, learn, do,
Oh, and for those of you who are listening at the moment, I'm going to ask a question. Is there a Texas thunderstorm rolling through? Is that, because I'm hearing it in my headset, it sounds like there's a big thunderstorm cracking outside, but it doesn't look like it's raining.
It's pretty overcast.
Yeah, I'm not hearing it.
I'm hearing this
interesting.
It's like it turned the fans down.
I wonder if it is picking up that. Could be.
Yeah, there's a roar that keeps kind of coming through.
Although you never know about Texas.
I was going to say,
one day than the next. You don't know.
My Uber driver was just telling me, so I was driving from the airport over here, and he was telling me about, he was driving a couple of insurance salesmen last week. Apparently there's a big storm here in town, a huge thunderstorm that came through and knocked down a crane in downtown Dallas, and a couple people were killed. And they were talking about just how much damage over the last number of years the insurance companies are trying to figure out how to mitigate some of it here down in Dallas. So you definitely live here, as he was saying, in Tornado Alley and the big thunderstorms that come rolling through. So maybe we'll see one this afternoon.
Yeah, you might.
It's been pretty dry here, so hopefully we can see something like that. I'd actually like to see.
I love those big lightning storms, so if we get that, that'll be a treat.
Absolutely.
So, Nicole, you had, I don't know if it's good advice or bad advice, but you took advice from someone who really didn't know what they were talking about, had no experience, but you listened to it, and you're headlong being trained down that pathway. You and Kirk find yourself in a spot in life where you're like, okay, you're both looking. You'd seen some examples of people who had the flexibility and the freedom with entrepreneurship. Tell me about your leap. Since this is titled the Leap Podcast, tell me a little bit about your leap. Was it scary, kind of leaving a job that you knew and you felt safe and secure in, or you were just like, no, I'm ready? I'm
it good. Really wasn't, because I think when you get hungry for a new result, it doesn't matter. Right? It's like everything else, all the security, I think, at times that you feel in a job. But when you're hungry enough, all of a sudden, now it becomes exciting. You get that exhilarating feeling of like, oh man, I could get out of this place. And that's really where I was. I was very hungry to learn. I was very hungry for different results. And so even though it took time, I think a lot of people think it's going to be easy too, when they take that leap, like, oh, well, I'll just make this decision. Everything's going to be easy. You got to be willing to stick it out. You've got to be willing to do the hard things to be able to get where you want to go. And so even though we made the decision that we were going to do something different, it took time. to begin to work hard and to switch that from being an employee, jumping over into entrepreneurship.
So you mean it wasn't like you hit a home run on day one and just the money starts falling out of the trees, and there's a season of building and scaling and
right. We wish.
Yeah. I've been reading a book titled The Messy Middle, and the author talks about in our popular culture, the starting a business gets celebrated, right? Like I saw on Facebook, you guys had the show, you had the big party here, launching of MacDaddy's, and he said the start of a business is celebrated. And then in culture, we also celebrate what would consider to be somewhat of the tail end of business, which would be like maybe a company has their IPO on Wall Street or a big exit. So what a lot of times doesn't get talked about is the messy middle. It's those long periods where you're gutting it out, working hard every single day to make your dream a reality. So tell me a little bit about, I would imagine you guys had a messy middle on your journey, right? So you got involved in real estate, and Kirk, you got involved in building an IT business, and then you guys have together built other businesses that have scaled and given you the freedom and flexibility that you've been looking for. Can you take me on that story arc of what you learned in those transitions?
Well, I think one of the greatest examples, too, and Kirk may touch on this, is we really started to learn about business systems. And that was really one of the books that changed everything for us. I don't know if you want to touch on that.
Michael Gerber was a huge, E-Myth was a huge book for me. But one of the things that, before we touch on that really helped us was we learned 3 keys to wealth, which was delayed gratification, long-term vision, and the power of compounding. And so Nicole and I, we basically got into the spot where we bought the American dream, right? Like we had the nice cars, we had corporate jobs, we had the nice house, and we looked good from the outside. But on the inside, we were in debt. We were working we were just crazy. Any money we made, we spent it, And so we started reading that, hey, look, you need to delay yourself. And so we're like, okay, so we delayed ourselves, and then we started learning and the power of compounding, those things that are really key. And so we started cutting out any excess that we could, right? We started getting rid of cars that we could get rid of, getting rid of debt, and then just carving that out so we could get laser focused. And so like I remember things delayed my gratification. My AC went out in my car in Texas in a van, and I would be going to share concepts with people, and I would literally have a seatbelt sweat mark across my nice shirt, and I'd be going in there trying to sell or pitch someone on my ideas. And so a lot of times I think in our culture today, we don't want to talk about the messy middle. We want to we want to portray that we've already achieved, right?
Right.
So we have all these things that we're seeing on social media. Hey, look at me, I'm successful. Let me give you advice. I want to know about the struggle. I want to know about where you came from to get to where you're going. And so we had a very messy middle because one, we were carving out debt. I remember buying $2,000 cars, running those cars in the ground, chasing our dream, and then leaving one breakdown on the side of the road, and then we'll come back and get that later. And we come back the next day, and some drunk driver hit it and totaled the whole side of the car out. And then we're like, and not even slowing down. I remember there's a great documentary on Arnold Schwarzenegger when he was doing his bodybuilding. I don't know if you've ever seen that. You got to check. There's so many great principles in there. But
that's on Netflix?
Yeah, it was on Netflix.
Okay,
it's been a while since I've
show notes, but I remember seeing it back in the day. That was phenomenal.
Yeah, there's so much teaching in it, but it was when he was at his peak. I think he had run Mr. Universe for like the 7th time, and it was his last time, but it's totally a documentary on that. I'd love to go back and watch it again. But he says, when I'm competing, if my car gets stolen, I can't even think about my car getting stolen because I'm so focused on my goal to get where I'm going that someone else can't even come and tell me that. They have to handle it for me. And I think that's where the messy middle is when you're chasing your dream and you're doing those things. Your car gets smashed on the side of the road. You're like, I don't got no time for that. Right? I'm in the hunt. I'm in the hunt. And I think a lot of times people want to pass that hunt and just talk about the success that they think they've already achieved, Yeah. But I love the hunt. I think the hunt is the funnest part of the whole thing, the battle, being in the battle and getting to where you want to go.
Well, so I think where you learn the most, right? I mean, so if you skip all of those challenges, right? If you skip the valleys, if you skip the, all of that, you're going to end up arriving at your destination not prepared. And now I was listening to a podcast the other day, and it was a guy in venture capital that was being interviewed, and he was talking about what he's looking for in people that he's hiring for his firm are young people who have gone through those challenges, and because that's where they are going to learn and acquire the skills that will allow them to grow and be the people that he wants them to be in his firm, versus folks who have never gone through any of it. And it's just like, you don't have the battle scars, right? And plus, and the other thing he was mentioning was the fact that you don't know how a person is going to react when they hit a challenge, right? You want to know. It's like, hey, has this person experienced a challenge in life? And if you want to know what they're going to, because everybody looks good when the going's good, right? But what you want to do is kind of look in the past and see if you can get a little bit of a signal in terms of, okay, how is this person going to respond in a tough spot? Do they just up and quit? Do they, so you guys learned all of those lessons in that messy middle. And I mean, I think for me in business, it feels like the mess, there's always a messy middle, no matter where you're at, because you hit a goal. Now you're trying to achieve a different goal. And so now there's a new messy middle. And then you hit that goal, like, okay, now there's another messy. So you're always in that fight, unless you just kind of like pack up your bags and go home, right?
Exactly. I think there's always a challenge. There's always something that being created. There's always something being recreated. I mean, if you're a business owner, you've got to be okay with that. That constantly you're reinventing yourself. Constantly you're on to the next challenge. It's challenge to challenge to challenge to success. Challenge to challenge to challenge to success. Someone could say failure to success, right? And so Kirk touched on even just long-term vision. I think that's a huge one. Someone that's listening to this right now and they're thinking, man, do I have what it takes to be an entrepreneur? To me, one of the biggest keys is having that long-term vision. You've got to be able to see far ahead, not just what is this going to produce for me in a week. You've got to have that staying power and be able to see things long-term.
One of the things that both of you have brought up was the business systems and the mentoring and the coaching. So when you mentioned, if I remember correctly, said delayed gratification. There's three laws to wealth. I'm gonna make sure I got that right. We'll put that in the show notes. But 3 laws of wealth: delayed gratification, power of compounding, and long-term vision. Is that right? Was that in the book? What book did that come out of?
I want to say that was Kiyosaki. Was that Kiyosaki's book?
Okay.
Yeah.
Cash flow quadrant.
He talks about the 3 keys to wealth.
Okay. So when it comes to the business systems and the coaching and the mentoring, I'm assuming that you guys didn't just stumble upon these books or these concepts. You had a business mentor, business coach, someone early in your career kind of say, hey, read this. This is going to change your thinking. This is what's going to help you on your journey. Tell us a little bit about that aspect of becoming an entrepreneur. How important is that? And do you look for different types of coaches throughout the course of your career? I mean, how do you go about doing that?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of ways you can go about doing it. It's like by recommendation and staying hungry. I mean, there's so much information that's out there now. It's like, how do you weed through the noise? Like someone could literally be listening to this podcast and say, how do I know that this hour-long podcast is actually, there's value in this podcast that's actually going to propel me? And so sometimes people chase all these rabbits and actually don't ever get to where they want to go. So I think you want to look for people that actually have success on the tree, right? Like fruit on the tree. That's what I was talking about earlier. Like, you see people all the time popping up on social media now trying to teach you success, but they're, sitting in their grandma's basement with a green screen behind them teaching you success, right? So I think the first thing is figure out who actually has results. What have they done? And not just in 1980, what have they done now that's still producing fruit?
Right.
And really grab a hold of someone and be hungry to learn from that person. But I think there's really key fundamentals to learning a great foundation to business. And one of them that my coach and success mentor taught me was, Michael Gerber. I totally lost the name of the book. E-Myth. That was a huge book for me.
Okay.
Robert Kiyosaki, those are key foundational books. Like, so there's success principles never change, right? So they're always the same. So those are great foundational success books those are core hardcore, fundamentals foundation to business. If you get those, if that's your rock, that's your bedrock. Like that's the first thing you build on is those type of books. Then you can add off to that. I was talking to a lady the other day. She's our neighbor. She has a successful jewelry business. She built it out of her house. I mean, she's doing 7-figure income out of her house. So she decides she's going to open up a boutique. It's a cute boutique. It's everything about it, but she's burned out. She's making good money, but she's literally stressed out. And I asked her if she ever read, because she told me that she was stressed out. Yeah. So I said, have you ever read Michael Gerber's E-Myth? This is at a football game. Yeah. Our kids play football together. And she's like, no, I've never read it. And she goes, I'm ordering it right now. She got on Amazon, ordered it right then. She literally texted me she goes, oh my God, this is my story. How did you know? Right? And now she can't put the book down, right? And so that book is going to set her up for a great foundation because she's an entrepreneur minded. She's smart. She's successful. She's smart. Yeah, she'll work her guts out, but it's not enough to actually be busy. So too are the ants. What are you busy about? And so you have to have those core fundamental books and mentors that actually direct you and guide you, that's been above, that has a 10,000-foot view, can see where you're going. I sit down with guys all the time. They say, Kirk, I want your time. I want to mentor you or mentor with you. And then I sit down with them and I say, do this, this, and this. And they argue with me. And I'm like, dude, you can't argue with me. You're not in the position to argue with me right now.
You asked me for my time. You asked me to mentor you. I'm trying to help you out.
Exactly.
Now you're going to argue with me?
No, but you don't understand my circumstances, Kirk. No, I do. That's actually why I'm above them. I'm not in yours. You know, so it's just a total different mindset of getting a mentor, knowing that they're pointing you in the right direction, and leveraging what they're teaching you to read. Right? What do you want to add to that, Nicole?
Yeah, no, just to stay hungry. You've got to, to be able to actually learn, you have to be hungry, right? I mean, there's been times in my life where I've gone through seasons of where my hunger's been down, and honestly, it all stemmed back to the belief in myself and the belief of what I could accomplish. And when my belief would be up, my hunger would be up. But when my belief was down, my hunger would be down, So those are definitely key things that you got to have if you're going to succeed.
We know the Heineken commercial where it says, stay thirsty, my friends. Yeah. It's actually, you should stay hungry, my friends. Yeah. So hunger is everything. If you look at your current reality, and you put that as a level line across, and then you put a line up to where you want to go on an angle, like whatever your dream is. And that gap between where you want to go and your current reality, that measure between there is your hunger level, and that will determine where you want to go. Because I talk with so many people that want to do all these things, but they're not hungry. I sit down with people and they'll say, this is my dream. This is what I want to do. But I'm not willing to get a second job. I'm not willing to do the things that I need to do to actually get to where I want to go. I sat down with a young lady the other day, and she's like, I want to be a fashion designer. I have all these ideas for denim and all these things, and I'm meeting with these things. And she's like, but I have no money. I was like, well, you need to make money now. You need something now as you're trying to do all those things. Right. And it's they don't want to do the middle to get to where they want to go. That's the hunger part. How hungry are you to get to where you want to go?
So this lady that you were chatting about at the football game, super successful, scaling her business, 7-figure income out of her house. It's pretty well done, but exhausted, tired, and stressed. And so I've read the E-Myth multiple times. And so you gave her a book to be like, okay, here, let's put some systems in place. Let's figure out a way in which you can systematize this to where you don't have to be there and where you can get some of your life back, where you can buy some of that time. Because, I guess the definition of success is different for every single person. But I've never met somebody who's been uber successful, let's say financially, but literally had no time or had tons of stress, who would then classify themselves and be like, okay, I feel like I've been successful. It's quite usually the opposite. You, in your journey, I know having known you and Nicole for quite some time, you went through all these various entrepreneurial pursuits to kind of find the sweet spot where you were able to define what success was for you, and you're now living that. So can you maybe take our listeners through that story arc of that journey? What did you learn? I'm assuming that you learned valuable lessons along the way. You were trying something. Nope, this isn't for me. I want to do something else. Okay, try that. Nope, this isn't quite for me. I do something else. And to until you get to the point where you are today. So what was it? How did you define success for both of you? What were you looking for, and how have you been able to intentionally engineer and design your life to achieve that? Because you guys, I know you're very happy, been successful, also have a lot of that freedom. So it doesn't happen by accident. It's intentional design, right?
Mm-hmm. Right, absolutely. Well, I think for Kirk and I too, we did have to do that, where we sat down and really defined, like, man, what is it that we're looking for? And one of the things that was very evident in both of us was that we wanted time. That we knew how to make money, right? We could go make money in anything, you know. But really, what's going to produce time for us? Because time is our greatest commodity. We're not going to get back yesterday, right? We're not going to get back the last 5 minutes we just had together. Yeah. And so we realized, man, if we can begin to build a system business, something that can give us leverage, leverage is huge. Leverage says this, man, if I would rather have, 1% of 100 people's time than 100% of my own time, right? And so, man, if we could own a business where we could actually throttle up and we could gain leverage and be able to acquire both time and money, we would feel successful at that point, because real estate, I love real estate. It's great. I love houses. I love going in and I love helping people. Kirk and I, obviously one reason we love businesses is because people are attached to businesses. There you go, right there. You got to love people in business.
Right. When you're an entrepreneur, you're always on.
That's right. And so we love to serve people. We love to help people. And, real estate is fun because I love to help people. But at the end of the day, real estate isn't enough because I want to also have my time. It takes me to be there. Right. And, same thing with MacDaddy.
That's a very demanding, and you're like on call, almost round the clock, right? Like a client, hey, I want to go see this house, I want to do that. It's just like, I have some friends that are in that space, and it is very, very demanding.
Right. And if you don't define those boundaries, it can be very demanding. And just like MacDaddy's, we love MacDaddy's. It's awesome to be able to serve people. But at the end of the day, other business that we build is because we want time freedom and to be able to really have leverage in our life.
Yeah, a lot of times people believe that they have to love what they do, right? So MacDaddy's, it's a great business. I don't love MacDaddy's, right? It produces income, but it's not my passion. So I think the biggest thing is people need to figure out what their passion is. I like helping people. I'm a little bit of a computer nerd. I like to fix things here and there, but that's not my ultimate thing. It's just a vehicle to get me where I'm going to go. In fact, my 19-year-old son is in the process of taking over this business because I don't want to do this business. So I think one of the biggest keys is, what are you passionate about? And Nicole and I were always passionate about helping people. We have a background in church ministry where we've served on staff at churches, reaching people. And we do the same thing with our coaching. We're passionate about helping people get results financially, spiritually, physically, whatever. We like to help people in those areas. And so I think the first thing you have to do is figure out what you're passionate about. And maybe that passion right now isn't producing money for you. So you have to do something like MacDaddy's or whatever it is to get that income in to get you to where you want to go. And so it's just, to me, I see different opportunities as a vehicle to get you to where you want to go and whatever your passion is.
Right. That's good. I think you also have to be, to own businesses, to me, you have to be legacy minded too. What kind of legacy do you want to leave? And sometimes it's not, a lot of people think in terms of legacy, they think of financial, but I think of legacy in not just financial, but it's three parts for Kirk and I. We want to leave a spiritual legacy, we want to leave a relational legacy, and we want to leave a financial legacy. And so things in our life, we bounce off those three parts of our legacy. Does it fit in one of these three? And if not, then we're probably not going to do it, because this is our focus.
So Kirk and Nicole, on this journey, you've experienced quite a bit, had multiple business opportunities that you have tried. Tell me about one of your biggest failures. I guess it could be a business failure, just a failure in life, but I find that some of the best stories and best learning opportunities that we've had in life would come from a failure or a setback. And I'm just kind of curious. I think a lot of times people will take a look at successful people in life and it looks like everything's just super easy and, rainbows and unicorns, right? and I think knowing you guys well enough that you've had obstacles along the way, you've had failures along the way that you've learned from, for a new entrepreneur who's getting started in the journey, or maybe somebody who is in that messy middle and might be going through a difficult situation right now, what type of words of encouragement would you give them?
Well, when you said the word failure, a lot of people are scared of failing, right? They really have a fear of failing. And I've never had that feeling. And when I think of failure, I think someone's got to have this big thing happen. It's this huge failure. And I can't point to anything where Kirk and I had just, other than when we were so financially trapped. We felt like a failure at that point, and luckily we were digging ourselves out of it. But I have had little failures, that of just along the way of things that could have tripped me up because of like learning how to handle objections, people that may have rejected me or said no to me in business or things like that. I would see sometimes as a like, man, I'm failing. But I'd pick myself back up and I'd go listen to an audio or read a book that could help me be able to overcome some of those hard things that you're going to deal in business when people tell you no, or, obviously how to handle objections or those things of when the result isn't coming fast enough.
You're working hard and it's just not, the result's not there. You're like, okay, is it ever going to click?
Yeah.
Right?
And then you hear someone tell you that, hey, what you're doing right now, you're not going to see for 90 days. And those little things were encouragements to me when it would feel like we were failing or going backwards, and realizing, no, all we got to do is just hold on for 30 more days because those results are going to come. It's kind of it's like the law of the harvest, right? What you sow is what you're going to reap. And a lot of times, if you've been sowing some bad principles, it's what happened to us. We were actually sowing some really bad principles before we ever really stepped out into entrepreneurship.
What was a bad principle?
Well, we were spending money like crazy. We were spending everything that we made. We were financing the American dream. Some of these things. You're
not investing for the future. You're actually spending your seed money to use that.
Exactly. So these were kind of bad seeds that we were actually planting, not even realizing that they were. And then we were reaping those seeds, and we were beginning to sow good seeds, but we were still reaping from the bad seeds.
Right. The bad harvest.
Right. And we could have thought at that moment, we could have had those thoughts of, man, this ain't paying off. If we didn't realize, if we hadn't heard an audio that said, no, you're just reaping the seeds that you had sown, just hold on, because these good seeds are going to come to harvest, And so that's what I think of when you say, failures. There were times where obviously I had those down times of realizing, man, this is hard. How am I going to overcome this? But,
It's interesting. I don't know if I've had anybody reference that to me before about a bad harvest and reaping the bad harvest. But we're here outside of Dallas, Texas, and you're not too far from here in any direction. You can probably get into farm country pretty quick, right? And so imagine a farmer plants a crop, and for whatever reason, it's, let's say, soybeans are in the tank, or some type of pestilence hits that particular crop. You literally got to go out there and rip out that entire field, sometimes burn it, right? You got, oh my goodness, we got to start over. And it takes a season to do that, get the soil right, rip all that out, refertilize it, replant, be like, all right. And so that farmer might be doing all the right things, but he's not reaping the harvest right then. And he's going to have to wait another season before he can,
You may have to fire some workers too in the process.
Yeah, that's right. Who told me to plant this crop, But that is for me, that is so apropos. I have seen that in my own life where you're just like, okay, I was investing on X and X didn't turn out. I've got to double down and
Well, think about how many people give up in that space.
Yes.
When they think, well, for just a short time, I've been sowing this good stuff and it's not coming to harvest, and they're still actually reaping some of the bad seeds, and they actually give up in that space. And we could talk, I mean, that
Well, they don't
business,
know the
relationally, you know.
They don't know the difference, right? So we were broke. Most people are broke because they sell their time for wholesale and then they pay retail for everything. So you can never get ahead selling your time for wholesale and paying retail for everything, right? So that's why you were broke. So most people don't know the difference on how that works. It's
So
like
explain that for someone who's never heard that term before.
So a mechanic could actually open up a shop and have business come in and make some money, but instead, for safety, he chooses to work for somebody and sell his time for wholesale, which is $15 an hour.
And the person who owns the shop is probably charging $45 or $50 an hour. They're making all the margin. The guy who's $15 an hour is not. He's getting the short end of the deal.
So then he takes that $15 an hour and then he goes out and he buys retail. He buys a brand new house. He buys a brand new watch. And so you can never get ahead working for wholesale and then buying for retail, right? That's why people stay broke. So you have to figure out a way to actually get to where you're on the side.
On the other side, where you're the owner, entrepreneur.
Exactly.
That's why people, I mean, that's what led you guys to take the leap and to be on the owner side of the ledger, because you have a lot more optionality, a lot more flexibility. And so, yeah.
So like for an example, here at MacDaddy's, I pay my guys $12.50 an hour to fix phones, right? Well, everybody else pays them $9.50 an hour. So they're, oh my gosh, MacDaddy's pays $12.50 an hour. I'm going down to work at MacDaddy's. Well, I can fix, one phone a day and the profit margin pays for their whole day, right? So he's selling himself for wholesale. Right, and then he'll go out and buy a brand new iPhone for retail, and that's why he has no money.
Yeah. Well, you're hitting on it. I mean, that could be a whole podcast in of itself. It's just financial literacy and understanding the power of money, how to manage it, and how to steward it. Right. So I'm very passionate about the stewardship of not just our financial assets, but our life in general. I'm a big stewardship guy, and it comes from my time being at Crown, and I had some great mentors there that helped teach me and mentor me in some very key areas. But once that light switch clicks and you see the world through maybe a different lens, or the light is on, and you really see what's going on, it's like you can't go back.
Yeah. Well, even this principle of learning, when we learned the cash flow quadrant of learning, there's 4 legal ways that you can make money, right? You're either an employee, self-employed, a B-type business owner, a system owner, or an investor. And when the biggest light bulb moment for Kirk and I was when we realized that majority of our money, when we stayed on the side of being an employee or even self-employed, small business owner, the majority of our money was actually going to the other side, feeding the hands of somebody that just wasn't brighter, wiser, smarter than us. They just had their hand on a business system where it was funneling that money. It was the biggest light bulb moment for us, because we thought, okay, our hard work, what we are doing is feeding the lifestyle of other people. And they're not better than us. They just have different information. And we got to figure out that information.
And to add insult to injury, when you realize that our tax codes in the United States have been written in such a way that the people who are either business owners or investors have a massive tax advantage, and the people who get hit the hardest are employees or self-employed. Your highest tax rates are right there. And you've got all sorts of loopholes, all sorts of tax advantages to be on the other side of the ledger. You're like, oh my gosh. You're like, I never want to get another W-2. I never want to get another 1099. You want to be able to get distributions. You want to be able to get K-1s. You want to be able to be that business owner or investor, because the taxes on that type of, we'll call it income, but is a lot less.
It's totally different. Yep. You're exactly right.
So what are some of the things that you do to help you stay organized, stay on track, stay focused in the fight? I mean, what are certain, every single person has like a different way of managing and organizing your life, but I mean, it could be an app, it could be, the way you start your day, but what are some of the things that are important for you guys?
Well, I'll start. I am very methodical.
Okay.
It's just
Detail-oriented.
Yes, very
All right.
detail-oriented.
Me too.
Yeah, that's why we're married, because opposites attract, right?
That's right.
So the mornings for me are just it. Like if I can get my morning started right, then the rest of the day can just flow. I get up earlier before anybody else. We have 3 boys. And so that is a very special time to me, that I can get up about an hour, at least an hour, if not longer, before anybody else stirs in the house. And that's just my time. You know, I go outside. I have this little couch on our patio that I sit down, and it is my time to read the word. I write down every morning things I'm grateful for and the things that I'm chasing, you know, things that are goals of mine and then within the next 10 years. And
So it's like a little planning session almost.
yeah,
Okay.
it is. It's my way. And then it gives me time to think. Like I do my best thinking out there. It helps me get because I'm a dreamer. I'm a thinker. You know, my mind races at night. I'll wake up with crazy ideas. Kirk and I laugh because when I wake up, I mean, I'm like, what about this? What about that? Huh? You know, and he's like, can you give me an hour? Like, let me wake up.
Give me a cup of coffee. Let me.
You know, and I've already solved every world's problem, you know, and so it gives me my time to where I can take all those thoughts and put them on paper and decide if I'm going to do something with them, you know. So, and then I read. I have you know, the book I'm going through. After I read the word, I'm diving into whatever development book. So that's how I stay sane, I'll say, in the business world. Because if I can start my day like that, and there's got to be a cup of coffee with it, then I'm good. You know, my day gets lined out, and I can start accomplishing as soon as I get done with that time.
Some good Thrive coffee, I hope.
Yes, most definitely.
There you go.
Oh, good Thrive coffee.
So, Kirk, it sounds like your morning is a little bit different from your wife's. What is your business hack, but how do you start your day? And then you have a fairly busy lifestyle, so how do you stay organized?
It's weird because I don't know if it's because I'm getting older or more motivated and more focused than ever, but I'm getting up earlier and earlier. I used to sleep until like 8:30, 9 o'clock, but now I get up at like 6:30 every morning. That's probably not early to some people on this podcast. They're like, 6:30, I'm up by 4. But I think some of the biggest things that I figured out as life hacks right now is I've always appreciated systems and leverage and all that stuff and like big settings in business and in teams. But now I'm really applying it at a smaller level, just getting MacDaddy started and, you know, understanding the power of leverage. And, you know, one of the things that Michael Gerber talks about in E-Myth is that you don't think that someone can do the job as good as you. So then therefore you do it. You won't delegate that job to somebody else. So I think, you know, one of my biggest things I'm working on is duplicating myself into my son Caleb, who's running the store, and teaching him, hey, everything needs to be systematic and leverage, and me taking the time to actually teach him so he can do those things and duplicate it, which frees me up. And so really understanding leverage, even at a small level, all the way to a huge level, is having systems that work for you, that while you're not there, and trusting people that they can actually do the job. And it's okay if they break something. So I started training Caleb, and he broke a $400 iPad Pro, right? And so I knew before he even started working I don't know if he broke it. It didn't work after he worked on it.
That might be considered breaking. It's like, okay, it worked, and then he touched it. Now it doesn't work.
And that was a whole learning lesson in itself. I was like, well, did you turn it on first? Did you look at this and this and this? And did you trust the customer of what he said was wrong with it? And so basically, I have to let him break things to actually get to where we want to go. And I think that's the part that's letting go of that. So I ended up buying this guy a new iPad Pro to replace it because I made it good and he was happy. Actually, he was in here, I think, when you walked in. That was the guy. So that's the biggest life hack that I have right now is actually doing leverage with people and trusting people that they can do the job. Which will free me up long term to do more things, and create and do the things that I want to do. I'm already like telling him, pretend I'm not here. Like, Dad, I'm not here right now. Remember, you know. So
make the decision.
Yeah, exactly. Just being productive and then staying focused because it's so easy to get off track and chase rabbits, you know, in the world that we live in. So going in mentally on a Sunday, like, all right, here's what I'm going to do. Defining what I want to do for the week. even just financial goals. So, okay, here's what I did last month financially. And this is what I want to do this month. I got 10 days left to do that. So just really dialing in where I want to be, what I want to do, has some things that I've been focused on. Just hustling, man. I love the hustle. I just love to be in the hunt. I love solving problems. So
you guys are Bonvera entrepreneurs as well. So as you're leveraging those principles within the Bonvera business, right? What are some of the key principles for, because you have a nationwide team, you've got people all over the country. How do you apply that principle that you are teaching your son with your folks within the business?
Yeah, well, with Bonvera too, Kirk talks about leverage on a small scale, but man, this allows you to have leverage on a huge scale, and we touched on business systems earlier, and the value of really owning a system, and a system says where it's the magic, not you, right? Where you can point somebody to, it would be, I'll give you like an example of like a small scale. It would be like Kirk having, a manual, something like Caleb could sit down and watch a video and teach him everything that he knows, and it doesn't take Kirk to be there, right? With Bonvera, it's so amazing that you can have a system where someone can learn while you're not there. Now what can you do? Right? How can you scale up when you can have thousands of people now learning while you're not there? And that's really what you want. You want a business that can duplicate that way, and then growing to just on a team level, knowing that you got to help a team member get started, but knowing that you have tools that now they can learn from the same information that you learned from, but yet you can still be there to coach and mentor. It's just an incredible partnership that you have with Bonvera, with being able to have a system, but yet be able to also have that one-on-one personal coaching and training and being there with them in the hunt. So it's a really special thing that we have, with this business.
So what books are you guys reading currently?
I'm reading The 100X Leader now.
So there you go.
Yes.
All right. Well, Jeremy Kubicek's going to be with us here in a couple of weeks.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'm excited to be able to meet him, and so I wanted to obviously get through that book and have all that great information. So
I'm reading a book called Life is Good. It's by the guys that started the T-shirt brand Life is Good. Yeah, it's actually
I love
good.
that brand.
Yeah, it's really good. It's two brothers. It's pretty awesome. Yeah.
They started it, if I'm not mistaken, in Boston, right?
Yeah. So it tells a little bit of their background and their struggles and their upbringing and stuff. So it's a pretty good book.
I'm going to have to check that out.
Yeah,
I love like biographies of business owners and that talk about the struggle and the getting started and navigating it. That's a powerful.
It talks about how they started making their T-shirts and they'd sell them like on the side of the roads and vans and stuff, and how they just took off and scaled, and it's a pretty cool book.
That's great. So when you guys aren't busy running companies and being an entrepreneur in multiple areas, how do you guys like to relax? What do you do?
Costa Rica.
Yeah, well, that's right. You've got some friends down there. You go down there and kind of live large, right?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
That's our home away from home.
Away from home.
Yes.
Yeah, in Costa Rica, there's no rules. There's just suggestions. So you can drive on the beach with a 4-wheeler. No helmet. Just whatever you want to do. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, that's Kirk's kind of country right there.
No rules, just suggestions. I like that. I've never been to Costa Rica.
I need to
take
go.
Yeah. So what's a bucket list place that you'd like to go? So, like a trip or something.
Grand Wale, Hawaii.
Really?
We want to go to Grand Wale, and then we also want to do the Tahiti.
Bora Bora.
Bora Bora. Okay.
Yeah.
Those are some of those epic ones, right? They got the huts out over the water. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, we've been blessed as entrepreneurs and been able to create residual income to where we've done a lot of trips. We actually homeschooled our kids. Majority of their schooling, and been able to travel, and they've seen all over the country and stuff. So now we want to kind of do some big trips like Israel, Bora Bora, Tahiti, wherever else. I think you're wanting to go to China, weren't you, to go buy some suits and stuff?
Well, I have. My favorite tailor in the entire world is Sam's Tailor in Hong Kong. And so I've built a nice relationship with those guys. And of course, I can like send them They've got all my measurements. I've done so much business with them. I can just send them an email and say, hey, I want this, and that, and it'll show up at my house in
That's
a week
awesome.
later. Hong Kong is one of my favorite cities in the entire globe. Of course, right now you've got a lot of civil unrest. I'm not sure what's going to happen, but it's brewing. It's a powder keg. So I don't know. I have friends that are there, and they're like, it's okay. But I mean, so at some point, you think that the government is going to step in. They're not going to allow the civil unrest to continue. But I love Hong Kong.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Okay, so what would be one of the most important skills that an entrepreneur could have? Something that you've learned on your journey. What would you think if as you're mentoring your son, he's about ready to take over the store here, and you say, Caleb, this is the number one skill you need to have as an entrepreneur?
I think being teachable, really. I mean, like, not just in the aspect of being teachable on how to run MacDaddies, but teachable in general. People will say I'm teachable, but are they really teachable when you sit down and try to tell them some stuff? So teachable, because if you're teachable, then you're hungry, right? Because the reason why you're teachable is because you're hungry. And so the ability to stay hungry and teachable, to want to learn, right? Not just learn what you're into, but continuing to learn about everything, and being a good listener, right? Like, most people are not good listeners. They're waiting for you to stop so they can interrupt you, so they can tell you their thoughts and their theories and, those kind of things. So I pray that I stay teachable and, a good listener, because those are really key aspects. And just, it's all about association, right? So who are you associating with? I can't afford to associate with certain people anymore because they're not that they're bad people. They're not going where I'm going, and I need to be associating with people at a higher level that have achieved more than me, so I know where to go to, right? So always looking for the next level of the person that's going to coach and mentor you, that can take you to the next level. Most people, I was thinking about this the other day, don't know where they're at in the hustle, right? So different people are at different spots in the hustle. When Nicole and I first started, we're in the beginning stages of the hustle. Then, like you talked about earlier, the middle stage of the hustle. And actually identifying people where they're at to know where you don't waste time, right? Okay, I can learn a lot from Bob. He's been, all over the world. He's, been CEO of companies. You have a lot that I've never experienced for. So when I'm around you, I should be listening and learning what you have to know. And so that way I can take that information and go to the next level.
Interesting. Nicole, same question for you.
I mean, honestly, I would agree with that. I would just add, when I say people skills, it's so broad, right?
Right.
But learning, probably one of the best books is How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Oh, it's a classic.
Such a great book. And just learning that people skills, meaning, like, one thing I can say, what am I most proud of? I think the one thing I'm most proud of is that we've instilled in our boys to be conversationalists and to have people skills, to not be afraid of people, to be confident, to walk up to someone, introduce yourself, ask them how they're doing. Those are such important skills. And I think that just goes along with just even service to others, being that person that you can, and not saying you have to say this, but having that attitude of, how can I serve you?
Well, that's kind of like the heart and soul of entrepreneurship in many respects, right? We're entrepreneurs are problem solvers. And I've been told, and one of my favorite all-time business quotes is, all business is relationships. So
exactly.
if you understand relationships, and Nicole, for you to you hit the ball out of the park with that, it's relationships, people skills, and then solving problems, right? It's just like you. I mean, Kirk, since we've been here on with this recording this podcast, even though we've got a do not disturb sign on the front of your store, the open sign is turned off. A handful of customers have come by and knocked on the door, and you've gotten up dutifully each time, walked over, quietly, opened the door. Hey, how can I help you? Try to serve. So you personify the principles that we've been talking about here today. All right. What about pet peeves. What are some of your pet peeves as business owners or as entrepreneurs? What are the things that just drive you nuts?
One of my biggest things.
Nicole's already starting to laugh.
She's probably got a lot. One of my passions is also teaching people how to be successful at sales.
Yeah.
That's, that technique that, a lot of times people have misnomers about selling. But one of the pet peeves or one of the biggest misnomers about selling is that you have to actually like the product that you're selling. I hear that all the time. Well, if I don't believe in that product, I just can't sell it. Right. And that's actually a big misnomer, because you don't actually have to believe in the product. The person buying it has to believe in the product. I'll give you some examples. I've sold everything under the sun. Recently, Nicole's dad passed, and he had all these old vintage Texas license plates. And I ended up selling some of them. I don't know anything about them, but someone else saw the value in those license plates.
You're not passionate about it.
I'm not passionate about license plates, right? Like, someone else is passionate about that. I bought some powder coated trash cans out of California with that painting from this thing. And I had my sons going door to door selling these powder coated trash cans, and because they had their favorite teams, like football teams are the color of like the eagle, whatever. And so they would go door to door and they would sell these powder coated trash cans to people that liked them because they're colorful. I don't care anything about trash cans, but I care about, someone else sees the value in that product.
Are you talking about like these trash cans that go out by the curb that you put huge bags of trash?
It's like a waste paper basket, about tall, but it's really heavy duty, and they powder coated them all different bright colors.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Like red, green, blue.
Yeah.
So I was teaching my kids sales.
So here you go, boys. Go sell them.
Go sell these. And we bought them for $3, brand new cans. And then we sold them for like $40. Like these cans, they knocked door to door, and they would say
that's a good margin.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm
And they were crushing. That very first house, the lady bought 2. So they were like high-fiving each other, fist pumping, man, we're going to be rich, Yeah. And then so the next 5 houses, they got rejected. And so then at that point, they had their head down knocking on doors, and their tonality went down. Hey, they're already thinking the person's going to say no.
Yeah.
So then I had to have a coaching talk with them, like, all right, here's what you got to do. You got to run the script that I taught you, and then you got to be excited and have expectation that they're going to buy. And sure enough, they started selling again. So, so I think a lot of people have misnomers about selling that I like to help people with correct that. What about you, Nicole?
I just thought it was funny when you said, what are your pet peeves in business? Because just a minute ago, I said, you got to love people, right? Service to others. But my pet peeve is sometimes the people.
Yeah.
I mean,
because
honestly,
it's going to be all types, right?
That's right. Yeah. If you're going to be in business, remember, you're dealing with people. And people are people. You're going to get some crazy ones. You're going to get some that just have some really odd thinking.
Right.
So.
Well, one of my mentors who was kind of helping me through, because I had some. Everybody has people problems or people issues, like as you said. And I think one day may have been complaining, and he wasn't going to have any of it. And he's like, "All right, Bob. All right, I want you to think of the most difficult person that you're dealing with. The person just drives you nuts, right?" I'm like, yep, you got it? He goes, yep. He goes, okay, trust me, you are that person to a whole bunch of people in life, right? So and I was just, and when I reframed it, I was like, oh, you know what? That's a true statement, right? So it's like, there's going to be people who rub me the wrong way, and I'm sure I do the same to others. It's just a matter of learning how to deal with folks, learning how to deal with stressful situations. And again, since business is all relationships, the people skills, Nicole, as you said, and the emotional intelligence is so critical. And that's funny. Sometimes it's all about just reframing and understanding and looking at the world through a different lens.
Exactly.
Well, Kirk and Nicole, it has been awesome being able to chat with you guys today. I think I've learned a lot, and you have provided a ton of resources. And so we'll make sure to have all the books that are highlighted in the show notes, some of my favorites, and also some new ones that I hadn't even read before. And so I'm really looking forward to getting that book, The Life is Good, those founders. We talked about attitude being everything. How you helped reframe some things for your boys and help them get back on as they were selling those trash cans, and then just relationships, But your entrepreneurial journey. So as I think about your story, there's some people who have made the leap, and it wasn't for them. You're like, oh my goodness, I'm past the party of the start. I'm in the messy middle. I don't like it. I quit, and they walk away. And you guys have gone through the messy middle of multiple business opportunities to where you finally, you've learned along the way. And be able to leverage that to where you can actually define the success that you want, and now are living a very successful life. And so I guess I commend you both for that. And hopefully for those who are listening, you've been inspired by some of the things that you've heard, and this will help you to dream differently, think differently, grab some books and dig a little bit deeper. For those of you who haven't read The E-Myth by Michael Gerber, definitely pick up that book. It will revolutionize the way you view yourself and view business. But Kirk and Nicole, before we sign off, any parting words of wisdom or comments to folks who might be listening from home?
I would just say, don't be afraid to try. Try. It's just like, I was an entrepreneur for several years, building teams and business, and I decided to get my real estate license. And there was some awkwardness to it, because I knew one way of doing business, but there were some things I had to learn. And I just had to keep reminding myself, don't be afraid to try, don't be afraid to learn and go out there and implement and just try, because you're going to get better. And then I'll just end on my favorite book, which is Be Humble, Stay Hungry, and Always Hustle. It's a good motto.
Nice. I love it.
Yeah, I would just say the biggest thing is, stay hungry and stay focused, and, don't give up. You're probably just one step away from a breakthrough. There's so many things I've learned in the last 6 months of just even getting MacDaddy set up, where I was one step away and someone brought some information to help me go to the next level. So if you are stuck in the middle, keep staying focused, stay around some people that are positive, get around good people that are more successful than you, and then keep reading, stay hungry, and then just stay focused. I mean, you are going to get a breakthrough. If you're doing the activity, if you're in the hunt, God will reward you, just like we talked about earlier, about you're sowing seed. Sometimes you can't see the seed that you're sowing, and then all of a sudden all the seed comes in at one time. There's times where things aren't going right. I'm like, oh, what is this? This is so crazy. Why is everything going wrong? And I know, like, okay, God, you're getting ready to do something big, because there's no way I could stay down this long. So there's some kind of huge blessing that's coming. So the main thing is make sure you're listening to people. If they're giving you advice and they're good quality people and they have results on the tree, listen to them, be open, and take that quiet time too, like Nicole talked about earlier, where she gets up early in the morning. She wants to get in the Word. She wants to listen, not to herself, but kind of get in the Word, calm her spirit, and then get direction. So that's all I have to say about it all.
Wow. Wonderful. You could not have closed with better insight and better comments. I thank you both for taking the time today, for shutting down your store, MacDaddy's, here in Carlton, Texas.
No problem.
And we greatly appreciate the time that you both have invested. And I appreciate the tour around the place. And just both of you guys are great friends. Thanks for joining us on the Leap Podcast. We will see you next time on another great episode, interviewing some incredible thought leaders and entrepreneurs to help you on your journey. God bless.
Thank you for listening to the Taking the Leap podcast with your host, Bob Dickey. You can keep up with the latest on the podcast at www.takingtheleappodcast.com and bonvera.rocks. You can also find the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, or wherever fine podcasts are distributed. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on Taking the Leap.